Deep dive, Dr. Hanna. I think we're seeing a bit of an innovation surge in Saudi Arabia, and that's at least according to one metric, and it's quite an important metric. I wanted to look at this a little bit, talk with you about it, connect it to the world of VC and what's going on in innovation and entrepreneurship in Saudi Arabia, a topic that we regularly cover on this podcast. Hussein Attar was our most recent guest on this, but Saudi Arabia recorded a 13% increase in patent filings in 2024, reaching 8,029 new filings. That is a lot. That's a significant increase. Definitely one of those good news stories that could fly under the radar, but this will have a big impact. The increase spans universities, research centers, and private enterprises. And there are really three things that are driving this increase, I think. One, you have sort of government backed initiatives like the King Abdullah City for Science and Technology. They played a central role. You just sort of have a new enthusiasm and vigor for innovation in Saudi Arabia. You can feel it and see it when you're on the ground there. You also have incentives for academic institutions and startups, which are encouraging innovation to take place locally for patents and for really anything that's related to innovation being done locally in Saudi Arabia. And of course, you have legal reforms in Saudi Arabia. This is massive, maybe the most important. They've streamlined the patent application process through the Saudi Authority for Intellectual Property. IP, when it came to US Saudi relations, was always a major sticking point for companies pre Vision. Can tell you that out of personal experience looking at it. Sectors leading in filings include clean energy, fintech, biotech, and AI, which is a huge focus for the kingdom, to the tune of, I think, like $200 billion. Those are all areas targeted for rapid development under national strategies. So I think, look, this is significant. It's real results from Saudi Arabia's growing investment in R&D, and also on the legal side, as I mentioned, intellectual property protection. And it signals a maturing innovation ecosystem. As Saudi Arabia does this transition from, a resource dependent economy to a knowledge based one, I think this is emblematic of that really going into overdrive. And so they've got to keep it up. Officials say the figures position the kingdom among the region's top IP producers now are a sign of rising confidence in local innovation. And I think we just need to see more of this. I think we can expect continued support for IP generation through global IP partnerships, startup incubation, things like that, university-led research commercialization. That's a huge part of this. And so in tandem, what we know for sure that's happening in Saudi Arabia is the strength of the universities is really starting to soar. KAUST is not a university, but KAUST and King Saud, Prince Sultan, King Fahd. I mean, all these universities, Princess Nora, these universities are critical for innovation and then ultimately the creation of patents. In the United States, of course, you have Stanford, Berkeley, all kind of in one little cluster, and then Boston and New York. So that you want to see that. This is also like down the road. Eventually, it must. This will impact the economy. And I kind of want to tie it into, excuse me, that my area of professional focus, which is VC. It's worth taking this news in the context of what's happening in this space. I mean, innovation, patents, these things form the backbone of companies, and often very profitable companies, especially in the United States and elsewhere in the world. So in the first quarter of 2025, we've talked about this, Dr. Hanna, on the show, but Saudi Arabia's VC ecosystem really saw a nice bump, securing $391 million across 54 deals. That's a 53% year-on-year increase. And that also captures 58% of all MENA venture funding. That's really good news for Saudi Arabia. Leading destination for VC in emerging markets, surpassing traditional hubs like Singapore, much smaller nation, not a really good comp, but I think Saudi Arabia sees a little bit of itself in Singapore's journey. Fintech dominated, of course, $384 million, 57% of total regional funding went to fintech, and that was bolstered by Tabby's $160 million Series E. So there was a bit of a bump just there from Tabby's next round of funding, but that's good. I mean, that's part of this number. Also, mid-stage investments A and B rounds saw and I hope you're sitting down for this number, 437% increase year on year. And that's really important, and a focus on more mature startups, ones that have entered the market that are doing well. not just on the very early stage seed, pre-seed plays. So how do you keep this flywheel spinning? Like, what can Saudi do to build on this? I think uh, the subject of this segment, right, where I've now wandered off, but I think patents, those represent innovation. They cement value to keep innovation, to keep it going, really. I think you can also make a case for expanded sovereign participation from PIF and Sanabel and Jada Fund of Funds. I mean, what SVC has done in this ecosystem, I mean, is amazing. So like you got to keep that going, but you want to have that role kind of evolve a little bit from anchor investor to catalyst. And again, we're now seeing that. So that's all good. I think this is just worth mentioning because it's a hard figure that ties Saudi innovation into something very real and something very valuable. Not all of those patents are enormously valuable, of course, but they're sort of the product of that culture of innovation that is now developing in the kingdom. I think it's cool. It's cool to look at this a little bit. Congrats to the 8,000 people that got granted patents in Saudi Arabia. Just cool. I'd love for you to weigh in now, Dr. Hanaa.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to highlight this. I think patents are definitely one way to measure what's happening in the innovation space. I definitely think that we sometimes conflate innovation with technology alone. And I think that, yes, while that's a great space to look at when we're thinking about innovation, I think that innovation is a skill beyond just what's happening within the tech sector. But if we want to like focus on kind of my area of expertise and think about innovation and education and what's happening in that space, I mean, we talk a lot about the kind of science sector and STEM education when I'm thinking about kind of how young people are really encouraged to think in new innovative ways to solve future problems with things like Mohiba and the competitions that they're participating in, which I think are actually happening like in the next couple of weeks, if not right now. But I think it's really interesting, like to think about the education sector and how the Ministry of Education is building a very integrated system for research, innovation, entrepreneurship to achieve this kind of growth for the future. And like that's a pipeline for more patents, more new technologies, but also just new ways to solve global issues and problems that we're faced with. And really to think about empowering young people, but beyond empowering young people alone, to empower the relevant kind of authorities that are involved in working with kind of young people and young businesses to really feed into that. So if you think about digital transformation, for instance, how Saudi is kind of embracing digital transformation in education through like, I don't know, Madrasati, which is their AI driven tech platform, for instance, that was a homegrown tech. It really helped with kind of getting people online, young people online during COVID. It was a huge part of the solution to a big challenge that the world was faced with. And it was a solution that was homegrown, developed by scientists in Saudi Arabia. Another one could be thinking about AI focused institutions. So, thinking about the Prince Mohammed bin Salman College for Cybersecurity, Artificial Intelligence, and Advanced Technologies. That kind of college collaborates with global entities like Stanford and Carnegie Mellon. And the King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals offers programs in AI, robotics, renewable energy. So, there's definitely this awareness of the importance of increasing the number of patents, let's say, because they know that this is really fueling kind of the tech that's going to drive the future. So I think there's a lot of global collaboration. There's a lot of engagement. There are interesting things that are happening, and more young people are continuing to engage in education opportunities. And more people are encouraged to start new companies that are in this space. So I think there's a lot going on, and there's definitely support sort of earlier in the phase of this kind of journey toward patents for young people.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other those are all great points. I think you can also there are sort of policy steps that can be made from authorities that can accelerate this. I mean, I think if you really put into place like what NIDLib's doing, which is trying to link R&D to startups through
Right.
IP commercialization programs, those kind of things really work. They work everywhere, but they just need to be sort of executed with, first of all, patience. It's really hard to stand those things up from nothing, but also with vision. I mean, like having a long term sort of vision for what that looks like and what success looks like there. I think also you can make it easier probably for Saudi Arabia to be more of a destination for the innovators around the world. I'm hearing about a lot that are moving there, that are interested in the market and getting into the market, but making visas and making residency permits and stuff easier for them so that there's no friction. They don't have to have an AUM or sort of bring a startup in. They can start to innovate, because if they do that and they're innovating locally, then that's where you're going to get the patent filings from, within the regime in Saudi Arabia. I think that we also talked about in the last show about FDI. And a key way to get FDI in here is to have viable patents, and then the money will come. The money will come from foreign investors. They'll say, we need to scoop this patent up and put it into the big old patent room we have if you're an MNC. And I think that kind of foreign investment isn't not an easy thing to achieve, but it is an easy way to make money if you have a lot of good IP that is being produced locally. Anyway, all of those things, but this is just like all the things we talk about. We're on the journey, and the trend is right. Keep it going.
Yeah. I think it's really important also to think about IP that is not necessarily, again, it's not necessarily tech IP, but I think that if you look at a country and you think they're really forward thinking because they're looking at, for instance, heritage preservation, and that is really important because there's a sense of belonging and identity that is cultivated through that. But at the same time, you're thinking of ways for people to engage in culture and heritage in new ways. So thinking of what the Ministry of Culture is doing, for instance, in different areas, but also thinking of other institutions that are rising up within Saudi. So I really think it's important to think about cultural innovation, for instance, and not just like the tech startups, right? So I think it's important to think, for instance, about ITHRA, the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture, which is in Tehran, and what they're doing for cultural enrichment, the new museums that they're developing, the libraries, the training that they're doing for young people. It's super important. But thinking also then of like El Balad in Jeddah and how artists are rejuvenating this UNESCO World Heritage Site by integrating modern creativity with traditional architecture, turning it into a vibrant cultural hub, how it's hosting new and innovative events. So I think there's really so many different areas that we need to look at when we think about innovation. And you need to think about a culture of innovation. And that's a really important part of the entire kind of movement toward really being an innovative society.
100%, 100, as the kids would say. And I would give that response as a closing response 3 fire emojis. Thank you for that. Let's get to the news.
Let's get to the news.